So, good morning, everyone. Lovely to be with you. Lovely to have you this morning. My name is Ulla Koenig. I'm a mindfulness and meditation Dharma teacher from southern Germany, and I'm here with you this week to talk about dukkha and the first noble truth, and the liberation and the compassion and all the healing qualities which is in this teaching for us. Before I start talking, though, just a short overview for those of you who are new to these sessions. Warm welcome to you as well. So I'm gonna talk about probably 15 minutes, and then we're going to do a meditation, which is linked to the theme of today. And we're gonna do a lot of compassion practice this week. And after that, you have the possibility to ask questions, share your reflections, share your maybe experience. I suggested a little practice yesterday to bring it into the daily life and out of the realm of the theory. And maybe you have observed something, and I would be so curious to hear about that. If you have any technical issues, anything coming up, please use the chat box, and maybe some of the experienced participants, or I think George is here as well, from Sangha Life, he might be able to help you. If you have questions, reflections, anything you want me to respond to, you could do me a favor and just write something in capital letters right at the beginning, which will enable me to find it in your lovely chat. And finally, if you notice that my mic is off, my video is off, the hair is off anyways, but there is not much we can do about that. But if anything technical is off, write that in the chat box as well. And I might be able to do something on my end. Okay. So at the end, I'd like to just the usual daily reminder that these sessions run on donations. And right at the end, George will post a link with the possibility to support myself and Sangha Life. And thank you for everything. So let us dive right into the theme. Yesterday, the last thing which came through was a question I have not responded to yet, but want to do it today because it's the perfect introduction for our theme today. Today, we're going to talk about the different flavors, the different kinds of dukkha, which is so often translated as suffering, and I wonder whether that is an appropriate term. So yesterday, someone asked, for my clarity, as I'm a relative newbie to the Dharma, is dukkha anything that causes us suffering, from stubbing my toe, irritation, to being stuck in traffic, to watching a loved one suffer, chronic illness and death? So that is a wonderful question. And if you feel like a newbie to the Dharma, and I would say it's very good to stay a newbie to the Dharma and ask those questions, ask them with curiosity, ask them deeply, pondering whatever answer you get from whatever teacher, ask the questions. Never feel you have to uphold that image of, I know the Dharma. I don't. I want to be freshly inspired again and again. Okay. So what is this dukkha? So first of all, let's look into the word again, because in English, it gets translated as suffering. And I find that is a big, big word, suffering. If we look into the Pali original term, we see that it literally means unsteady, unstable, or very literally translated standing badly, like something which is wobbly. Yeah. And rather than translating it as suffering might be one aspect of dukkha. We could translate it as unsatisfactoriness, or incapable of giving, of keeping, stableness, satisfactoriness, something which is wobbly in its ability to give satisfaction, in its ability to give stability. And so I find unsatisfactoriness maybe the better term. If we want to get a feeling for dukkha, we could read that first paragraph again, which we read yesterday in the introduction. I'll read it out to you again. Being born is difficult. The Buddha describes the whole heap of dukkha. Being born is difficult, aging is hard, dying is painful. Sorrow, grieving, pain, anguish, and despair are all painful. Being stuck with what you don't like is stressful, and being separate from what you do like is stressful. In brief, the 5 aggregates that are affected by clinging bring no satisfaction. Here we have it again. And we can find in this small little quote quite a few types of dukkha, actually. There are those challenges, that is a part of dukkha, which are linked to our physical existence. Yeah, we're living this life through with in companionship of a physical body. And this physical body, we all know, and I know because I'm aging, and my children love to point out that the first grey hairs there, it's aging. It's impermanent in its nature. And impermanence not only meaning it's aging, but it's also always changing, always a bit different, very easily impacted by outer circumstances, weather, heat, coolness, quality of the surroundings, etc., etc. And as a consequence of that, we experience the process of birth, aging, dying. We experience sickness, and we experience also, and that belongs to dukkha too, physical discomfort. And the body has many, many needs. I find it, awesome is the wrong word, but it's something awesome to observe, to say this body is never long satisfied under one condition. Even if you lie in bed, and we know that from people who can't move themselves in bed, they need to shift and change position because the body can't lie still for very long. We know that from meditation clearly. It can't sit still for very long. It gets tired, it gets restless, it gets overcharge of energy, undercharge of energy. It needs food, it needs drink, it needs just a lot of maintenance, care all the time. So all that is a form of dukkha, saying, wouldn't it be nice? And how many traditions, especially I'm thinking of the old ascetics in India, tried to just overcome that, saying, we need to overcome all the neediness of the body, the whole neediness of the being. They assumed that peacefulness, liberation would be there if I could overcome all those needs. The Buddha tried it and then dismissed it, saying, does not work, this attempt. Another form of dukkha I can hear in this quote are all those challenges which come up, which are linked to our sensitivity. We're very easily impacted beings. Our heart minds, our other traditions would call it psyche or nervous system. It's reacting, it's responsive to your surroundings, other people, the quality of the atmosphere around, the weather again, like everything which is coming from the outer. And the heart-mind responds to that. So we have, I think I would almost say two qualities of dukkha. First, we are almost always reverberating with something in the outer, and that can be hard. I know that, for example, I'm living in a small village, and when I come to bigger cities, I just notice how the different speed, how the different amount of people, how the different quality of the surroundings, less nature, more buildings, more concrete, how that impacts. Just the mere surroundings, not even having spoken to one single person. Sensible creatures, and that has its challenges. And on the other hand, we have a hard mind who constantly tries to protect and keep safe and maneuver and manage these experiences. And so we have all kind of emotions and moods, which arise in response, oftentimes in impulsive reaction to those experiences. And the Buddha names a couple of those who are particularly challenging, which is sorrow, grieving, pain, anguish, despair. There are downright abysses in emotional experience. Yeah, we don't need to believe in a sort of religious hell or heaven. We have that sometimes within us. Yeah, having an episode of despair, having an episode of depression, that is hell enough. Yeah, so there is dukkha within this heart mind, and that can make life really, really challenging. And finally, we have all those challenges which come up just with everyday mundane experience. Yeah, there are experiences we appreciate and we want more of, and then there are experiences we would not like to have. And guess what? It's not under our control. Yeah, we have some of that and some of the other experience, and we all know the friction. We all know the friction with experiences we'd rather not have, and the longing, the yearning, sometimes the desire for experiences we would like to have. And so all these are categories of dukkha. And I would like to add more to them. And I would love for you to be curious to add more to this list. When we say dukkha is everything which provides a challenge, yeah, everything which robs you of relative ease, relative just okayness with this moment, yeah, whether it's within you or without, I would consider this to be dukkha. And I find that in other areas of our lives as well. I want to point you to relational, interpersonal dukkha. Yeah, there are those lovely people, and guess what? They are just as imperfect as I am. And they were all living in an imperfect world, which means there's a lot of fuel for for friction with the world. People are getting stressed out. Being stressed out, they are reacting more impulsively, and there is all this unsatisfactoriness in our relationships, and that is dukkha too. Yeah, we speak a lot about the person, the single person, the individual in our practice, but actually there is a lot of interpersonal dukkha as well. And now we live in a changing world. Yeah, nothing really totally reliable and solid, and sometimes we get really sad, and sometimes we get really lost about that fact of life, and that would be dukkha too. Yeah, our search for purpose and meaning, and sometimes we find life to be inherently empty. Yeah, not making a lot of sense. And what am I here for? And feeling so lost in a form of meaningfulness and purposefulness and significance, I find that is dukkha too. Yeah, I remember that as a teenager, that was probably one of my most impactful forms of dukkha. Yeah, saying, well, what on earth am I here for? Yeah, what am I supposed to do? And people might be having all ideas and living according to some plan, but there was a feeling already in teenage years to say, well, is this the purpose of life? Is this really truly meaningful? I don't think so. Yeah, and there was a lot of suffering about that. And then this lack of control, I find this is dukkha too. Yeah, to say what is truly really under our control. Yeah, my emotions aren't, my thoughts aren't, my impulses aren't. Yeah, and to say, wow, yeah, I might feel very helpless and trapped with that. Yeah, saying that is dukkha too. So I hope that gives you such a broad overview of dukkha. It's really an umbrella term, and there goes so much with it. And you are very much invited into exploring all those types of dukkha in your lives. And it comes in all of your aspects, the relationships, the relationship to yourself, to others, to experience, within, without. You will notice this, friction. And it comes in different intensities, and that is something I really like to stress. Dukkha is not only this traumatic experience, it's also this small wave of irritation. I would love for people to feel into the dukkha of anger, for example. Yeah, anger is such a beautiful example of the heart wishing for things to be different, of the heart mind, wanting to use pressure and power to shift things and get what we want. And underneath that, there is almost sometimes a sadness and a grieving and a hurt. Yeah, I think that is dukkha too. This whole experience of anger, and not to say I'm bad because I'm angry. I'm shaming myself. I'm blaming myself. I shouldn't have these experiences. But to say, well, underneath that anger, there is a lot of suffering right now, or a small amount of suffering. Even if I'm irritated with my children, yeah, I did not invite that irritation. And it helps me so much to just acknowledge it's hard to be a mom right now. It's not always hard. It's not all of the time misery, but sometimes those children, they can quite challenge you. And guess what? Your colleagues can challenge you. Your partners will challenge you. And I love to stop and pause and truly acknowledge that. Saying, yeah, this is hard right now. And that does wonders for me. Because else, the heart, if the compassion would not safekeep the heart, there would be another impulse, another program, another sankhara running through the being. Yeah, and saying, okay, how do I manage that pain? I'm going to tell my kids what kind of bad kids they are. Or I'm going into blame and say, I'm a really bad mother. I shouldn't feel irritated with my kids. Or I'm going to, already a bit exhausted, going to do a cleanup in the kitchen and end up even more exhausted. Yeah, some form of response to the dukkha is there all the time. And we have this ability in our practice to choose wiser responses, caring responses. But it's okay to have a response, have a reaction to dukkha. And so over time, we might learn how much compassion is a form of safekeeping the heart. We might feel that this whole teaching is a bit depressing. Yeah, I'm going to talk about dukkha the whole week, so that impression might come up sooner or later. Just keeping in mind that we are taking one particular perspective this week. I'm not saying, never saying life is suffering. Yeah, there are many other aspects to your life. But dedicating this week to fully acknowledge, yeah, there is challenge. And it's not my personal fault. It's not something I brought over me. It's part of every human's existence. And Buddha Dasa said it so beautifully. He actually greeted his monks and nuns with the words, dear brothers and sisters, we are all brothers and sisters in aging, illness and death. Just making this the common denominator, yeah, changes our approach to each other so much, I find. And the last point for today is that you might be familiar with this simile of the first and the second, and I'd like to add the third and the fourth and the fifth and the nth arrow, where the Buddha said, well, to his monks, well, if you get shot by a first arrow, is that painful? The monks, yeah, nodded their heads and said, yes, very much so. And he said, if there is a second and a third arrow, would that hurt more? Saying, yeah, that would probably hurt more. And he said, very well so. Now, the same happens within us, he said. The first dukkha, which touches our heart, that might be inevitable, yeah, something out of our control. But very often the impulsiveness, the reaction to, adds a second and a third and a fourth arrow. And it's almost like there is an impact and then there is a cascade of reactions to that impact. And I always wondered how that simile is taught in a helpful way. Because what I hear is an assumption that there is a first impact, and I should then be able, and here we have the narrative of control, I should then be able to get all this reactivity and be done with it, yeah? Not react to it, just like hold that dukkha. Yeah. Yet when I speak with people, I realize, and I realize for myself as well, that the first impact and a couple of the reactions after that are not under my control either. Yeah. A lady on a recent retreat, she told me, I was sitting very peacefully, she was sitting outside and a fly hopped on her arm. And in this peaceful meditative state, she could just observe how very impulsively, without her deciding to do anything, she slapped the fly on her arm. And she said there was literally no room to have any impact on that reaction. And she was very, very astonished by that. And I want to use this image of the fly to really start an observation to say where starts my ability to respond to an impulse. Where starts my my possibility to co-create in this chain, in this cascade of reactions. And it might not be for us with certain triggers and initial arrows right the very first reaction to that. Sometimes a pain, a dukkha, causes such a strong impulse within us that we are just observing, watching the show, watching the cascade running down. And then there will be a moment where you notice, oh, now I can do something about it. But it might be the reaction to the reaction to the reaction to the dukkha. And I think there is a huge potential for shaming. There's a huge potential to just repeat this narrative of I should be able to control. And I'd rather like to have you exploring to say, where is the point where I can co-create? Okay, I hope that makes it fairly clear for this morning. And now let's go into meditation and then hear about your questions later. Thank you so much for listening. Okay. Find yourself a comfortable posture, and I'm going to feed my computer, which is just as needy as my body, with some electricity. Okay. Find yourself a comfortable posture. Allow yourself to sit, to lie down, to stand, even to walk if that is appropriate this morning. On looking at the numbers, there are 128 people together here this morning. Maybe we can, just at the beginning, imagine that all of us came here to learn to deal with our own challenges we're experiencing on a daily basis. We're not alone. All over the globe, maybe, but we're not alone. And you don't have to earn compassion by having a huge amount of suffering, something really tragic and important. No, the everyday friction is just enough. Let's check whether we can make our bodies a bit more comfortable, maybe just a small shift and change in the posture. And just see whether you can do this with a caring attitude. Dear body, dear imperfect, aging, maybe sick, maybe hurting body, let me just see whether I can do something for you. Maybe we can keep this body company just for a moment longer. If you don't feel well in your body, please feel free to feel your surroundings, even to open up your eyes to notice the space around you. And if it's okay to stay within this body for the moment, just notice those restless places, those agitated places, those tired places, those tense places. And maybe we can for once meditate with the idea of saying that is okay, that is even normal. Not being frustrated that we come back to the cushion and once more meeting all that tension again and trying to soften it again, and that endless labor and work which gets us so tired after a while. Saying, no, quite normal. But could it be different? This body in constant exchange with the outer. It's like bringing a very thirsty animal to a pond or giving it a bucket of water, saying, oh dear one, you ran for the past couple of days. Here, have something to drink. You can say the body, you braced yourself, you were ready to act. You got the emotional charge of all the people around you touched by that. Dear body. Maybe let me see if I can soften here and there, invite you to do so. With gentle inhales and exhales. And maybe doing so you meet the quality of your mind this morning, the quality of your attention. Maybe there is a lot of discursive thought. Maybe you notice it's not easy to stay with something. And isn't that dukkha too? That we have no control over this mind either. I can't control my mind and say, here, feel that, see this, be with this. I can invite it. I can make it comfortable. I could use a lot of pressure. But I don't have no control over this capacity of attention either, not fully. So if it's very active this morning and if your mind is racing, just be gentle with it. Oh wow, something really stirred you up. Maybe there's a habitual way of planning and organizing the day and going through the to-do lists. Or maybe the mind is still with yesterday and those past experiences, still ruminating about ways in which the past dukkha could have been avoided, or at least made up for. So gentle, gentle with the thoughts and the thinking mind. And if in face of that challenge, just being here, just noticing how hard the whole system tries to maneuver this life, sadness, grief comes up, or quite the contrary, gratitude. Just feel that, allow that to be there for a moment, saying, yeah, maybe it's a challenge this morning. What if you give yourself permission to feel that challenge just for a breath or two? It does not have to be tragic or traumatic. Maybe it's just that nagging friction with life. Maybe compassion can be that simple, just that tender acknowledgement. Saying, no, it ain't easy. I know that is not easy. For those of you who like to work with the imagination, maybe mindfulness can be that quality which holds that felt sense of dukkha, ouch, that tension, that restlessness, that discomfort. As if our mindful gaze at that can have a very soft, tender quality. And whenever that becomes too much, remember that the feet on the ground, the sitting bones on the chair, the cushion in the bed, maybe you lean against something. There's a whole visual world. You could open up your eyes and just look around. Anchor yourself in the room. Listen to something. Maybe you touch something. There is no need to drown or overwhelm yourself with experience, please. And then you don't have to search and look for the dukkha. You could just sit here and invite the body to soften as best as it can. Maybe if you like, practicing with your breath, gently, softly, smoothly breathing into your body. Playing with this idea of breath as nourishment. And maybe after a while your attention stumbles over another form of dukkha, physical experience, a thought, memory. And just feel out whether you want to go there. And if so, can you do so with tenderness, saying, yeah, that is challenging too. Ouch. Let's just see whether we can bring this practice into community. Whatever challenge you're dealing with right now, however small or big it might be, just in this circle of people, just right now practicing with us, those 120 something people, some of us will very well know your pain, will very well know the friction you're going through. And they could turn to you and saying, yeah, I know that hurts, dear one. I know that is a challenge. They could turn to you with authentic compassion saying, yeah, I know this is it was challenging for me, it is challenging for me. And just see whether you can get in contact with this compassion from the others in the circle acknowledging the friction, the challenge you might be in right now. That might bring up all kinds of responses. And then I invite you to let go of that perspective and just come back, if you feel like, to this body. Once more, just noticing, being in touch with the felt experience of sitting, standing, lying, walking. Just that, just something so simple. And very gently we bring this body back into the movement it needs. Back into moving our fingers and our toes. Generously stretching it. Thank you for being still for a moment, body. And now let's move it. Give it a bit of the stretching, the movement it might need to feel okay. And when you feel ready, you can open up your eyes and come back to the screen. So now the time has come for sharing upon experience. Maybe it's a question, maybe it's just something which wants to be shared. And I'd really like to emphasize at this point that either during hearing the talk or also during meditation, all kind of responses are okay to have. You might not have felt compassion. You might have felt overwhelm. You might have felt resistance. You might have felt resistance, like saying, is this going into the direction of self-pity? I'm not going there. Yeah, so please feel free to just share all types of reactions. There is no correct reaction, and we could look together into that. And maybe some people would be quite relieved to hear a, let's say, non-expected reaction, because they might just have gone through the same. Yeah, okay, thank you so much. So here Susan wrote something. As I meditated, thoughts of how dukkha passes down the line of one unhappy family into the next generation. Beautiful. On and on it goes. It is difficult to escape the effects even as an adult. I have done my best to acknowledge and deal with my own dukkha, so it reduces the chances of passing it further down into another generation. It is not about blame. Can you suggest any skillful ways to help reduce the impact of this kind of dukkha? Thank you, Sue. Thank you. I'm lovely to be in touch with you. That is something which can make our hearts very tender, to see, well, it's not just about me, it didn't start with me, and tragic outer circumstances like war will have a huge impact on what gets passed on from generation to generation. Tragic forms of discrimination can cause waves and waves of dukkha, which will cause transgenerational suffering. Yeah. So part of our responses to dukkha, part of our ways to deal with life, which cause really a lot of pain, yeah, they are not invented by us. We inherited, so to say, a part of that. And my heart gets very soft when I think about those generations before and those generations after who will feel that, yeah, feel that, inherit that to some way. And well, my perspective is always to come back to the here and now and say, okay, what is my work? Knowing and honoring and respecting those before me and those behind me, what is my work right now? Where do I see dukkha in my life, in my responses? And to do that maybe with this heightened sense of agency and responsibility, yeah, which needs to be accompanied with a whole lot of compassion, to say, yeah, well, I'm not just doing this for me, I'm just doing that for a lot of people. Yeah. That makes it, for example, sometimes easier to rest. That makes it, for example, sometimes easier to be compassionate, because we might know that I need to rest not only for myself, I need to rest for a lot of people. I need to explore compassion not only for myself, but maybe for a lot of them. Yeah. So I hope that goes into your direction, Sue. Ruth writes, so many tears, so much tenderness. Your consistent gentleness at such a brutal time is a true gift. Thank you, Ruth. And I truly hope that this is something we can find to be a refuge. Gentleness, yeah. Consistent gentleness. That is beautiful, Ruth. Thank you for sharing that. And allow the tears to come. There is such a healthy aspect in skillful grieving. Yeah, I don't think that the sentence I read out to you should be saying that we should not be grieving. Of course, the heart grieves what was beautiful to it, what was once nourishing to it. It grieves all the ideas we had, who we could be, and how our relationships could be, and how our families could have been, and the mind is all able to imagine that. And in the confrontation with life, yeah, I find such a need for grieving those images, yeah. The relationship has not turned out to be that way. My body has not turned out to be that way. And oftentimes I sit with that grief, and if I don't fuel it into the story making and into the story around it, but just sit with that grief, something washes through the being, yeah, washes through the being, and that is the path towards acceptance for me. Yeah, acceptance is not a decision we make; it's a process, and for me, it goes through a lot of grieving as well. Thank you for sharing, Ruth. Pauline is writing. The last part, imagining others to understand my experience, was really touching, because it is what I think I'm longing for so much. Beautifully discovered. But even though there came tears, there also came doubt that anyone is actually trapped like I am. Yeah, how is it possible that others share my experience of suffering? Great, Pauline. There is so much to explore and unwrap here. First of all, sometimes in these plays with perspective, we did a play of perspective with compassion. Yeah. Sometimes we notice the heart is not responding to the idea to be compassionate for someone else. What actually the hunger is, the need is to almost receive compassion from the outer. Yeah. Sometimes because we haven't received a lot in the past and there is a real hunger for that. Sometimes because there is so much resistance and fear about receiving that we almost push that away or ignore it or are not aware of it when it comes to us. Both possible. So to notice, yeah, that feels fruitful. That feels like the Buddha would say, onward leading. Beautiful discovering. So there is something to work with, something to explore, to remember that, to say that feels like a key to my front door, the front door to samadhi, the front door to peacefulness, whatever it is. Yeah. And then to accept, to say, yeah, well, of course, there will be some resistance, some bracing, some mistrust around that topic. And that is just what came for you up next. This big question we all might have: is it really true that anyone is getting how challenging it is to be just me? Yeah, just me, being with that depression, being with that anxiety, being with this uncontrollable anger, being with this family situation, and so on and so on. Yeah. Tragically enough, we don't share our suffering enough. Yeah. I would love for us to share about our hardships, not in a way of comparing hardship. Yeah, that is what we then often do, saying, well, my suffering is not important enough. There are other people in the world who are suffering much more than I do, and therefore I need to just ignore that or cope with that. Yeah, that is one way. Comparing is poison to compassion. And then there is this conviction almost of saying, well, there's shame around. I'm saying I'm particularly bad off. I'm particularly wrong. I'm particularly sometimes damaged, I feel. So who else on this planet should get that? And if we could open up about our feelings of depression, our feelings of confusion, our feelings of dissociation with the word at times, wouldn't that be beautiful? Because then we could have a feeling saying, yeah, I'm not the only one. And I have the privilege of going on every retreat and having one-to-one conversations with people. And I can sit them in front of the group and knowing, wow, every single person in here is carrying their burden. Yeah, it's carrying their burden. And maybe that listening to others and listening to their painful experiences can just bring us that, to imagine saying, wow, if you had the capacity to listen to my suffering, you would understand, wouldn't you? Because you're going through similar processes. Yeah, I hope that helps, Pauline. Fiona's writing, I too became aware of a strong belief that everyone else here is wise and stable and mature and more evolved than me. Yeah, and just notice the dukkha of that. We come to the pain, the dukkha of the self-belief, the self-image, the self-story on Friday. But just recognize what Fiona just said as the self-story as bringing up a lot of pain. Yeah, it is isolating, it is shaming, it is, cutting through the potential of receiving compassions for others, because I think they are in a hierarchy. They are superior. They are superior to me, and in my inferiority, I can't receive compassion from them, or they would not be willing to give me compassion. So to explore this compassion is a very, very important practice, to open up and talk about what we are ashamed of, and then maybe to someone who is very likely to be compassionate, and then to fully receive that. Last story of the day. I did an experiment on the last retreat, and I talked about something I'm not particularly proud of, my struggles with my running and my clinging to my foot, which just won't heal, and all the processes I went through and the clinging which was in that. And I sat there and I talked to 20 people. Yeah, 20 people. And afterwards, the talk was ended. I went back into my room and I just could feel my heart shaking with shame, saying, oh gosh, I just opened up about this ridiculous behavior in front of 20 people. And I had to go to bed with that. I had to go to sleep with that. No responses in the evening. And then the next day it was very beautiful, because people came to me and just told me how much sharing about unskillful behavior and unskillful patterns helped them to be softer to themselves. Yeah, and they felt acknowledged in the humanness of just having ridiculous patterns at times. And I noticed that took the shame, put the shame to sleep then finally. But to say, opening up in that way, and confronting our vulnerability enables us also to receive compassion, because if we open up about it, if we become tender and vulnerable, someone can turn to us and saying, yeah, I went through the same thing and I know how hard that is. Yeah. And just as Sue wrote, connections help us with suffering. She found that in Sangha, and I can just hope that we can create a place. I have a feeling we create one place where we can actually do that. Yeah, this is why the chat is so powerful with us, because you can write about that, and I always see waves of compassion coming in the chat if someone shares about a vulnerability. So thank you all for creating that place. Yeah. Anyone wanting to ask something, share something? So great. David is writing, we can't bear the pain of the word. The awareness of what we can deal with is paramount. I've realized that my life struggles have in the main been self-inflicted. In the main, I have discovered my own ability of compassion and acceptance for myself and others. Yeah. Careful with the word I. Yeah. My life struggles have been self-inflicted. That self that might or might not have inflicted those patterns, it is a mind's construct. Yeah, how we deal, our capacity to deal with the challenges, our programs, which we either invented because we were overwhelmed with our suffering and did not know what to do with it. Yeah, not know what to do with it. So the heart mind goes, okay, let's react with anger, let's react with withdrawal, let's react with etc. Anything which feels like it roughly solves the problem. We might have inherited some of those patterns from the past. Yeah, saying, yeah, we learned a couple of patterns from our parents, from our culture, from the overculture, how it's appropriate to deal with struggles. And it's such a process of the Dharma to unlearn those patterns, learn new patterns, trust into new patterns. Yeah, that I would say this almost blame of having self-inflicted is not appropriate, and can be too harsh of a concept. The question is to bring it to the here and now, saying, I'm not that person anymore. And what is the momentarily practice? Yeah, the guilt about the situation of the past is just can be used as an information to say, what do I want to make differently today? What are the values? What are the principles I want to live today? And let me try my best today. If guilt stays something which blames us for the past, it is unfruitful. So it should be something which comes into the present and inspires fresh action. Thank you, David. Gwen is writing, I think, like others, I've internalized a message from childhood that no one likes a miserable person. Yeah, and have to probably be with that or cope with that. Yeah, everyone wants you to be cheerful and happy. Yeah, and that is very much the tonus of our society at the moment. So I don't think that is only childhood. It's what the culture we live by. Yeah, you're supposed to be happy and okay. And if you're not, and if you're depressed, what's up with you? Yeah, you're obviously doing something wrong. Such a harsh culture. So we need to create safe spaces to share our suffering. I would not share it with everyone out there, but I would want to put some energy into creating safe spaces to have places where we can share about it. And Catherine is pointing to that as well. Shame sharing is so important. I realize I can even shame myself by saying I should be more compassionate to myself and others. Yes, yeah, should is a good indicator, isn't it? So beautiful. Thank you for the sharing today. And we're going to look more into that human common nature of ours tomorrow. And how that actually can lead to an ennobling way of practicing. It's a noble truth. So some nobility somewhere has to come into the picture. We're going to explore that tomorrow. Thank you so much for being here today. Enjoy your day. Acknowledge the suffering which comes up, whatever it is, the teeny tiny and the bigger one, with compassion if you can. And if not so, be compassionate that you can't. Okay, and we see each other tomorrow. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support in whatever way you can give that.